So thank you for joining us. I am Eric Rains, founder of Unleashing Natural Humanity, and we are here for another Cedar Tavern Roundtable. With me is my friends Barbara Buck and Matthew Mournian, and Barbara is a reconnective intuitive healer, correct? Is that what you call yourself nowadays?
Just an intuitive healer because I do so many different modalities at this point. I don't even do modalities anymore. I don't know what I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call. I just call myself an etheric alchemist nowadays. Like there's, we just change stuff on the etheric realm and stuff happens.
That's what I do. Yeah. So yes, that is exactly what I do.
And then with us
I
also
guess we
is,
should create a name for it. I do multidimensional healing because that is kind of what we're doing now, as opposed to our little creepy box healing we were doing before.
I think there definitely has to be like a differentiation. There has to be like an understanding of what is happening with this type of work, because it's not like everything else that's happening. It's much deeper, and there's crazy miraculous results. And it's my good fortune to know you guys and to be able to learn from you and be able to show you guys what I know. And it's really, really crazy how the last couple of years have just evolved. Speaking of evolving couple of years, Matthew Mournian, he is a multidimensional intuitive tarot. What would you call yourself, Matt? Like, what are you going by nowadays?
That's a good question. At this stage of the game, and thank you for having me, you guys. At this stage of the game, I think I've learned to define myself, or at least the stage of the mission. The stage of the mission that I'm on right now is all about multi-dimensional healing, intuitive reading, something that I like to call spirit guide or higher self consultation, which for you guys that end up watching this is literally the unfoldment and the development of the skill we know as telepathy in the human body, and the level to which we can use that to alter our own frequencies, our energy. So I would say at this stage, I'm a multi-dimensional healer, but most of my mission right now, or what's happening for me, is really assisting people with activating and developing the multi-dimensional intuitive senses that they have. And for a lot of us, you guys, that's just, old school psychic energy and the level to which we're capable of embracing and developing that at this time. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's why I think I'm here. So,
well,
that's why I'm here right now.
Right here, right now.
At any moment.
Yeah. Well, and it's really funny because like just watching you guys since I've known you, like we've known each other for probably about 3 years together now, right? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Something around that? Well,
yeah.
Like, you're not even the same people anymore. Like Barbara, you look completely different. Matt is somehow reversing his age and changing his facial bone structure.
Yeah, something really has changed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot going on, and it's amazing to watch the levels of energetic connection that are really starting to flourish on the planet. These aren't just random bursts where people can catch it and it's like, oh, that was amazing, and then it drops off. Like these are sustained flows that the stronger it's being immersed, the more light that is being created on the planet, the more transformation that's happening. And it's just amazing to watch what's happening. Like you guys are amazing.
What's interesting too is like when you look at that, like for me, I've been doing healing since 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And really from 2000 to 2012, it was just like, meh. There wasn't there. I learned all of this stuff. I learned a lot of stuff, but really the frequency just really wasn't there for me until really like in the last 6 or 7 years. But in the last 3, it's like all of a sudden just boom, 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 boom. It's just like exponentially increased. I think it has for all of us, to where it just starts going faster and faster and faster. Because now what's happening is we're creating this kind of collective database, if you will, that we can all start tapping into to get information. And we're all kind of starting to tap into this this system that I think we're all creating together as healers, and it just makes everything go that much faster. So like all my data is in this field, all your data, all everybody, with respect to like what we do. It's just really fascinating to me. It's like, wait, I kind of really want to do this thing. Okay, now I can do it. Like the Matrix when they just plug in and, I can do jujitsu now. I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's really amazing what's going on right now. What you're talking about with the collective points of information that are starting to rise. The way that I see this all happening is it's like we already have everything where we already know. And so we're really kind of trapped inside this limited perspective of the brain. And the more that we start to explore the sensations of the body and move outwards and really start to feel things opening up on these levels, the more we start to logically understand them. And then if we logically understand them, we could walk through the process to create what randomly, spontaneously ignites. And like what I'm seeing right now more than anything is it's like the logical brain is starting to balance with the belly brain. You know, people's heart spaces in the center, that logical procession, that belly brain instinct, you know, that transformer in the middle is like starting to turn on. And I'm just seeing so much more logical understanding of deep instinctive ancestral knowledge that's starting to wake up right now. And we are just like on a place where we saw really incredible stuff start happening, you know, like 2013, 2014, the ball started to get rolling faster and faster. But like right now, it's almost like there's an avalanche that's like barreling down the mountain and there's no stopping this. And it's only picking up speed. Like, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next couple of years.
I know. What about you, Matthew?
I agree with you guys. I will say that it feels like what you're talking about, Barbara, with, you know, describing that unified feel of infinite information that, you know, spans across all space and time that's currently available to all of us. To me, what that is talking about is what Ra talks about in the Law of One as the beginnings of the social memory complex and the level,
Right.
which, or rather, I guess we could say the phenomenon of everything being known instantly. All is known, all is apparent, everything is out there, everything is available. And that kind of vibrates well with what Eric was saying in terms of, you know, these ancestral energies that are coming online for us right now. One of the things that I really love to see and what's happening, and probably, you know, like part of the reason why I've changed so much, and Eric and you and, you know, like some of the people that are watching this, is, you know, because we're literally integrating with previous versions of ourselves, parallel versions of ourselves. A lot of you guys that will eventually see this, that are going through these wild transformative episodes or these wild experiences, is the unfoldment of those DNA strands and the activation of, you know, those skills that you used to have in past lives, those things that are coming online right now. I would say from my own experience, one of the most notable energetic phenomenon that I've had in my own body, you know, recently is what I understand to be the fourth density activation of the emotional qualities of our organs, meaning the fourth density liver, the fourth density heart, the fourth density spleen. There's literally an energetic emotional layer, this bubble of energy, you guys. I'm sure you've encountered it on some level, Eric, and it's like these linings that go around the organs, that it's literally activating and exacerbating stuff on this wild level. I think that kind of describes in an internal perspective what you guys are talking about from an experiential like point of view, if any of that makes sense.
Of course it does. It does to us.
Yeah, I love how you always bring it back in a completely different way than I'm looking at it. It's like I see so many things, man. Like, and it's like you have to put your focus on something in order to really explore it. And it's like we have this general awareness going on, and then like that spot focus. And it's like whenever I start talking about something and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
well, wait a second.
If there's one thing I've noticed over the past few years, and this is even evidenced, you know, by our recent personal experience in Mount Shasta, is one of the things I've noticed is you're working on like this like overarching, it's like a galaxy level, like you're working with like these energetic elemental like forces and like the tornado, you know, like the smile tornado like thing that we're doing, whereas Barbara's working in this like interesting sort of like void space of like fourth and fifth D, like, you know, consciousness and beings, whereas I think I'm kind of like looking at it from like a microscopic internal, you know, like view. I think it's funny to note that we are all seeing the same phenomenon from an equally different, you know, placement on this field. I don't know. I just think that's really, really cool to see that.
Well, you know, and like everybody kind of looks at things like a pie chart, and I can't look at things like a pie chart where there's only like slices. The way that I see all these types of things is it's like it's a sun, you know, and the sun, it's shining out in every single direction all the time. But the earth is only that one straight line that, you know, that light, that beam of light that is reaching the sun or the earth. And so it's like if the earth all of a sudden jumped into this perspective over here, it's got a completely different line of sight to the sun than it had beforehand. And, you know, that pathway, that travel right there, it's almost like what we want to do is instead of just be that spot focus. We want to expand it all the way out, but at the same time, it's like that spot focus is the expansion. And I think that's that whole level that I'm really trying to look for and really trying to connect in right now, that you're all playing around with and starting to come up with your own thing that I've never even seen before. And it's really cool to watch you work, man. It's really amazing to watch these modalities just burst into existence.
I'd kind of like to share my little take on this too, and I think you touched on it in our texting back and forth when we decided to do another one of these, when you were talking about the what did you say about the mycelium? What were you talking about there?
Oh, that's like a whole background story.
So I think I can segue into this, because you guys are talking about the two different ways that you view things. Here is how I view things. So basically what happens is that, well, explain it for the new folk, maybe who don't understand this. Quantum particles, right? You as a human being, you are multi-layered energetically. You have multiple different dimensions to you. You have like your 3D denser quantum particles that vibrate, or they spin at a specific frequency. And then as you move out in your layers, the frequency of your particles changes, right? So it goes from being really dense particles to out, less dense, to kind of think of it in 3D terms. But your very dense particles, like in your 3D body, have to communicate with your really, really less dense particles, right? There has to be communication. So when you look at quantum physics and you look at the researchers who play around with string theory, I don't play around with string theory. That's what I see. I see this whole system of energy that connects the 3D structure through these little strings and filaments to our light bodies, to our like higher dimensional frequencies, or our light bodies, or our oversoul, whatever. There's actually like this whole system of communication. I know Lisa Renee calls it, and I don't know if I'm talking about the same thing that she talks about when she talks about nadial structures. I just call it the web. So how I do things is I see these filaments of energy that connect to particles. So like if I do an abundance clearing, it's not really an abundance clearing. I'm actually like, I'm clearing those strands of energy that are connecting you to the quantum particles of the thing that you want to create in your existence. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's like, so I see it from that, and I see it as you're not clearing, you're actually tuning like how you tune a guitar from a C to a D. Mm-hmm. So it's about like tuning frequencies. Does that make sense? So I see it on that layer right now. That's how I do it. And so it makes it easier for me to connect into the 3D structures, the 3D energies, or the really small things like a liver and the multidimensionality of a liver, because your liver is existing in multiple realities too, right? So I see it based on like, I see both of yours, and then I add my whatever stringy theory thing happening. That's how I explain it. That's how I see it. That's how I perceive it right now. Subject to change at any moment after this conversation.
Well, so that's actually one of the things that I've been really paying attention to, is like how we end up becoming aware of like a completely different level, and then we start working inside of that. What I've been doing is I've been holding on to the old one, and then I've been going inside of the new one, and then I've been like almost lensing them. It's almost like instead of using this one perspective right here, it's like you shine through that perspective back there, and then it's heightened by this one over here. And I've gotten up to like 7 or 8 different lenses right now, that it puts such incredible expansive focus into such a small space at one time. And it really, really starts to, it's like a quantum vibration, that it shifts the molecular structure, and all kinds of crazy stuff starts to happen inside of the body. And so that's actually one of the things that I've really, really been paying attention to, is like every single time that I find a new space to work in, I try to bring what I've already done into that space and then see how that overlays on top of it. Because just like, you know, when we start bringing in the bioelectric field and then we make that tingling really strong in the body, and then we pull the smile into it, it changes the frequency of that tingling field and makes it stronger. And it's like these lenses, it's almost like a microscope, or like a magnifying glass, like a laser. It's almost like a laser. It's like you really, really bring down that beam of light to the point to where it's super highly focused, but at the same time, it's affecting whatever else that you're already working on too. So it's it's really, really interesting stuff. And like when you start doing this, especially like with what Matt was talking about, how I work in the galactic levels, like I can blow up my light body to the point where I can encompass the entire galaxy. And from that space, you can do work like breathing down through the stars, all the way to the solar system, down to the planet, down to the person. And from that space right there, it feels very open and all encompassing. It's like, it's almost like I feel like I'm cleaning out those strings that you're talking about from the perspective of where they come from. So it's like so crazy how many different perspectives are. It's like, here's the whole entire sunlight and everything's shining out in every direction. And then we're all over here and kind of traveling around and getting new stuff. But there's people over here, there's people over there, there's people over there. And it's like, I think the true full spectrum understanding is when we take all of that and merge it into one. And then we really, really start to figure out where this is coming from and what we can actually do with it.
That's true. So for me, I see the strings as like a communication between particles. So what that can mean is literally, it can be the particle of me talking to you and us having a connection, or it could be literally me and my connection to the central sun or Andromeda or whatever. There's these filaments of energy that connect all particles. And that literally means all particles, all information that's contained within that light frequency. So it's like, I sometimes have a problem going laser focus, like what Matt talks about. I tend to go really, really big, and I have to force myself to go down into, because sometimes you have to make yourself really small to get into that energy, like what I noticed Matthew, and maybe you could talk about this more, Matthew. And it's something that you do too as well, Eric, but you've been really, really focusing in on the meridian systems, but with you're specific to like the actual organs, like you said in a few minutes ago. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit? Because I'm really interested in it. Am I putting you on the spot?
Are we asking me or Eric?
Yes. No, I'm asking you, Matthew.
I was waiting for him to respond. Okay. With respect to that organ system, or I guess what I would call that
emotions and the organs kind of thing. What you were talking about.
Say that again, sorry.
No, just go for it. Just talk.
Okay. Anyway, what it seems that you're talking about is what I call, and probably what I'm going to be talking about at the end of this next week at this big thing that we're doing, is the fourth dimensional activation of the internal layers of the body. And so along with what a lot of us understand right now is, this 15 or like the 15th dimensional thing that like Lisa Renee has been talking about recently, like the expansion of, I guess, like the etheric layers of the energy body. We're also expanding from an internal perspective. And so I think in hopefully addressing what you were talking about, a lot of my focus right now seems to be going into the intricacies and the specifics of the ways in which the multiple energetic pathways in our bodies are interacting. And so it's like I'm looking at the interactions between our chakras and our meridians, and what I understand as being the elements of what we, some of us call the nadial complex, which for you guys that are watching this and are like, what the hell is that? That's just the additional layer of energetic, or what we call etheric circulation, or like circuitry that goes in the body. Lisa Renee talks a bit about it. By my understanding, it's one of the layers of the energy body that was present within the physical complex of a lot of us in previous civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient Egypt. During those times, you guys, the human body had a slightly different makeup in terms of our energy centers and the circuitry. And so when we're addressing these multiple layers of like past, present, future, along with what Eric's talking about, like an overarching, it's like the galaxy, I can't say the word, perspective. There it is. I'm trying to go inside and look at the interactions in the midst of those subtle layers. So, for me right now, that seems to be taking the form, oddly enough, of a dialogue that I'm kind of having with the insides of people. And it's a dialogue I'm kind of having with myself, in which we're literally talking to our organs. We're talking to what it is. And along with that, we're talking to the higher self. And along with that, we're talking to, like the multitude versions of us that exist through space and time. And I feel like I'm rambling about it already, but for me, it continually goes back to the idea of fourth density integration in the body, and this idea that we're creating literally the social memory complex, that everything is known. So we have this massive layer, this storehouse of genetic, energetic, ancestral info that's all packed inside our body. And I guess if I was going to like describe what I'm doing, it's like literally I'm trying to take this view and look as deep into it as we can. So hopefully that makes sense. But
yeah, it does. And you know, when you're talking about that medial structure, you're literally, what I perceive is that that's where reversals seem to occur. That's where a lot of interference happens, is you know, with, you see, I see it kind of attached to that, because obviously it's very important, because if we are able to go ahead and tap into this, I mean, everybody, not just us, the three of us right now, we already know how to do that, right? But nobody else does. Or there's maybe what, a few hundred people who are working on that level right now, or maybe a couple thousand, even if it's only 10,000. Everybody has access to this. So our goal is to kind of help everybody in our own ways to get access to it in whatever way we can. So, you know what I mean? Because there's a huge level of interference around that I've noticed anyway. I'm sure you have, which is why you're working on it. Right? That's how we find it. We find it with these wonderful etheric beings that are not being very nice to us.
our buddies, you know,
our pals, yeah.
the flies that are showing us right where the rod is. They're
exactly.
so beneficial. They're a little pesky, you know, but
yeah,
it's definitely that's exactly how I start finding things. Like I'll come into contact either like through a client or myself with a different field of energy that like everything that I'm normally used to doing, it just doesn't work. It doesn't take care of it. It doesn't clean it out, and things don't shift. And so then I have to go into that new field and that new frequency and really go and explore it. Like, what is this? What does this feel like? What is happening here? And then you can recreate it, and then you can make it a high vibrational field so that anything inside of that is hiding from you, you can really kind of go in and take care of. But that opens up a whole new doorway to understand that frequency and what they're doing to really mess around with people on that level, and the goal, the purpose, what's happening, why it's there, how old it is, you know, so on and so forth. It's like all right there. And all we have to do is just lean into the discomfort of all the nastiness that's being pressed on, you know, and most people try to run away from it, and they're like, oh no, the good things, I want the good things. And it's like, well, you know, you've got these nasty things that are dragging you back from that. And notice how you can't touch that over there? Well, that's probably a good reason why, you know, and all we have to do is just explore it. And then all of a sudden it's there, and then we can see it, and we can keep doing something about it.
Tell us about the thing you were talking about that you wanted to talk about, because I'm really interested when we were texting back and forth. I know it's probably going to open up a whole new can of worms, but.
So, okay, this is actually one of the most interesting upgrades that I've gone through. So the way that I look at this energy world, every time that I become aware of a new frequency and I master that frequency, it's almost like a level up. All of a sudden there's new experiences and understandings and awarenesses and pathways that you can travel through that level. And like the first time this happened, that was my initial activation that let me become aware of the parasitic construct to begin with. And I've gone through probably like 150, 200 of them since. And each time I keep on opening up into a space where like, well, there can't be any more. Like, I mean, this just feels so good. It's so powerful. Like there can't be more than this. And then, you know, as we expand into another layer, it's like, wait a second, there's more, you know? And so what ended up happening, I had a client who she's been really in a rough spot, you know, and I find a lot of people really stuck inside a victim mentality when you're doing this type of work. You know, the demons are attacking me, you know, stuff like that. And for the most part, getting out of victim mentality and really stepping into a place of sovereignty is more than enough to start really alleviating that and making it so that you can take care of it. This woman is one of the most loving people that I've ever met in my life. And she shines like a light in the darkness and just has so much craziness that was happening. And I went into this session with my full intention to give my most heartfelt presence, to be there to figure this out and try to help her get away through this. And as I was doing this, I became aware on the galactic level, almost universal. I almost had to stretch into the universal body. It was like almost on a quasi semi-galactic level right there. And as I was there, suddenly I became aware of a very similar consciousness to what happens when I'm like communicating with plants. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, wait, what is this? And so I start breathing like light and laughter and movement through it. And every single thing of the light that I put out, it got sucked up like it was something starving, and it was pulling the light in. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm just kind of hooking it up to source consciousness and letting it feed it light. And it's just getting more and more fleshed out, and it's getting more and more conscious. And I'm starting to recognize, like, this is like almost like a plant oversoul type of a thing, but it's very grassy. It was very fern-like. It was like straight, long pieces that, you know, I'm going from here to there, and this is where I'm at. And it was almost like it just got stuck in a cave, and it was used to being out in grassland or something like that. And as I got that to start really opening up and letting go, it's like I had this weird communication going on with this plant level that it kept on pointing me to a place inside of the Amazon forest in the middle of South America. And I was like, well, I'm working with this lady right now. I'll come back and check that out later. And so I start shrinking back down into the solar system level to where you're about as big as the solar system, and you can see all those connections on that level. And from this perspective, there was it was like a downline of that very grassy, fern-like, planty oversoul type of a feeling. And it was more along the lines of, like, it felt more animalistic. It was like tendrils that were reaching and grabbing around and, like, you know, like choking vines type of a sensation. It was almost like it was becoming more animalistic as it was searching for more food, because it couldn't go out anymore. It had to only go deeper into the darkness. And from that perspective right there, I went and I cleaned that out, and it started to really kind of make this very deep earthy connection. And that spot in the Amazon forest was like exploding at me. It's like, me now, pay attention. And I couldn't. Like, all of a sudden she started to have really awful pains inside of her stomach. And so I went into that trying to figure out what was going on, and it just felt like this decay. Like, if you had like spores growing inside of a dead body and it took over the whole entire abdominal cavity, that's what it felt like. And her whole entire organs up top underneath her chest, they were like spitting out spores and just this nasty, disgusting fungal mold that was rotting her from the inside out on an energetic level. And so I went in and I started trying to communicate with this the same way I would with like a plant, and it wasn't working. And so I started to try to see if I could maybe connect in on the spore level with what was like kind of spitting out. And that's when I felt like this shocking kind of like I rung a bell, but this bell like kind of rang through the entire universe. And the next thing you know, I'm seeing this fungal mycelium, like that fuzzy white material that grows through things and then it turns into fungus or mushrooms or things like that. Like, I'm seeing all of these, like, and there's this huge massive space underneath the Amazon forest that's at least 2,000 miles square that is nothing but mycelium, and it's like this dormant consciousness. And as soon as I made that connection with like that toxic energy, it was almost like I was seeing bits and pieces of the genome that was pulled out. And so it was nothing but like a survival go-ahead. It was like almost like a virus type of a thing. And so what I found was when I connected it all the way back into the plant oversoul, it's like all of a sudden everything became conscious. And suddenly I could become aware of all the quantumly entangled mycelium, the fungus, and the spores from those three. They were three very separate consciousnesses that were all together at the same time. And they were all quantumly entangled throughout the entire universe. And so as I'm looking at this and I'm exploring this, I'm seeing bits and pieces where there's stuff missing. It's almost like there was something that was like kind of hacked out of the genome and then pulled away. And so I start doing soul shard retrievals on this and finding the pieces that are missing and pulling them back in. And as I'm doing this, I'm telling her what's going on, because I'm trying to get that spore to, or whatever, that moldy program that was going on inside of her body to start shutting down and creating something that was bioenergetically active, something that was healthy. And as I'm talking about this, she's telling me about how she just watched this, I guess there's a new Star Trek program out, and it had like a spore or a fungus that they came into contact with that was completely and totally conscious. And as I'm sitting here, and I said, wait, don't tell me anything else. I'll tell you the story of what's going on right here. And so I start talking about how it's only trying to find its way back to consciousness. There's major gaps that it knows that there's something that it's missing, and it was trying to open it up and connect into that. And so as this mycelium starts to grow, I'm making the connection into the fruit, into the fungus, and all the way out into the spore. And what's happening is it's like this universal quantum brain is starting to wake up, and all these bits and pieces that are physically holding on to this resonance, they're all like synapses of this universal brain. And it started to break down how it views the universe and why it was affecting people like this, and how it had no idea they were even conscious until it have that level of understanding brought to it. And what ended up being shown to me is like as I was in the Amazon forest, I was getting sucked deeper and deeper into this jungle, and it was getting darker and damper and hotter. And then all of a sudden I'm at the foot of like this earth that I could recognize. This earth, it's different than the earth around it. And it's like a doorway. It's like a gateway. And I start sinking into this almost like it was water. And then the next thing you know, I'm below the surface of the water, and it's like I'm inside of the earth, but it feels like liquid. And then I can see everything up above the water as what was growing up out of the jungle. And so I'm seeing both sides of the same coin right here. And then I start watching the life cycles of large animals, and I'm seeing them live their lives, and all of a sudden they're dying and they fall to the earth. And then it was this crazy activation of the mycelium, and it was almost like it was reaching up to hug it, to pull it in, to break it down. And like what we see is decay. What we see is something that's nasty. It sees as the building blocks to create something beautiful, to create a verdant new life. And so as it pulls it in and it breaks down that toxicity into the individual nutrients, and then it breaks down and it feeds the forest floor, it's turning this all into like a compost or like a fertilizer. And from that, there was some of the most beautiful verdant energies that I've ever felt in my life. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I can totally see how to apply this here. And so I start going in and I'm moving, and I inhale into my hands and I push them into the organs underneath her chest, and then I open it up. And I'm starting to feel like normally how I showed you guys at the retreat, you know, you tap into the energy and everything that's left over, you just suck it out. I was like, well, this is compost. Let's see what we can do with this. And so I started to grow the mycelium energy all the way through that density, and then I activated it. And the energy that I found activates this more than anything is like a wonder or like an awe sensation, like a thunderstruck moment where you're standing on the brink of the universe, just gazing at the majesty of everything in front of you. And it's just like, oh my God, you know, and that feeling, it activated it to the point where it started to grow. And then it was like I saw everything dry out on the outside and turn into like almost like an earthy brownish dirt that was like so full of life, that the life that sprung out of this, it was insane. I've never seen anything like that. And immediately every single thing that this lady was feeling, that the crazy pressure, the insane pains, the inability to digest, the allergies, everything that was going on physically disappeared like that within seconds. And everything started to open up and flow. And I started to use this energy ever since then. I've been playing around with it, and anything that I can't make transmute into laughter, into forgiveness, into gratitude, into light frequencies, whatever is left over that I normally suck into the central sun or into the earth, I've been turning it into fertilizer. And I got to tell you, I have never experienced anything even close to what I have been able to tap into since then.
What does the fertilizer look like? Is there like a color?
It's like that density. It's like when we're at the retreat and we're lifting our bodies up with the light, the laughter, and the joy, and then all of a sudden you become aware of that heavy thing inside of you, like that trauma that's connected to that point in time that blah, 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 blah happened. And then you go in and you release the emotion of it, and you feel that heaviness drop out of you. Then you can go back into that memory, and suddenly the emotion isn't there. You don't have that hit anymore. That right there, instead of draining it out and transmuting it, I'm turning it into something that has a brand new potential for exponential growth. And what ended up happening was it actually started to grow through my body. It was like I was growing my nervous system through my muscles, like mycelium grows through dirt, like it grows through its food. And the awarenesses that I have got going on right now, I have been having really hard times decoding. Sierra was talking about like feeling what her dragon was doing the other day. And as she was talking about this, I'm seeing 10 different versions of Sierra all speaking to me at the same time while she's got her dragon form trying to speak to me in dragon speak. And all I'm hearing is just, you know, and I'm not understanding any of this that she's trying to tell me. And like I had to just kind of blankly look at her and be like, could you tell your dragon to not talk to me at the same time the rest of you is? You know, and she kind of gave me this really weird look. And it's like, you know, these are the things that I'm right now, they really don't make much sense. But they never do in the beginning when you start uncovering new abilities and new skills. You just have to go in and play around with it and immerse yourself in it and see what happens. And that's what I've been doing. And my body is, it's so malleable right now. I feel like I can stretch my bones and it actually changes my physical structure now, you know? So I don't even know what's going on.
You look introspective, Matthew.
Well, yeah, I was trying to figure out some form. I guess kind of the way that I tend to discern what I hear from other people's activations is, you know, probably like a lot of us applying that to some element of my own experience. And what comes to mind, or the way that I seem to classify, you know, what seems to be going on with you, Eric, is it's like some sort of a composting or transmutational frequency. It sounds like, or it felt like, when you kind of like rebuilt or reconstituted or put back together whatever that fungal network was inside her gut. It almost feels like that, to me, that feels like the point where you plugged yourself into a new sort of network.
Yep.
And I guess literally being the fungal network that exists, which for me feels like my understanding of the earth grid structure that for a lot of us exists kind of right at the connection where our earth star chakra, which for a lot of us, you guys that are watching, it's about, some people say it's about a foot underneath your actual physical feet in the energy body. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but it feels like you kind of plugged yourself into a more dense or a more intricate version of whatever that network is. And now your body's like decoding and trying to figure out what these frequencies are. And some of them are like a weird radio station. That's all,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, and that's a trip, man. I believe that's a true example of being a multi-dimensional explorer and like really kind of feeling into and exploring, you know, what's happening in our world.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's like an energy, like I've never even felt anything like it before. Like, honestly, I feel like I've been missing about 75% of everything that I'm cleaning out now. And that was everything before, you know, 5 days ago. So
how was her, so when you were done, what was her reaction? Was that it? Did you feel like everything was completed at that moment, or did you have other stuff that you had to do to kind of clean up or anything like that? Was that it?
Well, there was a little bit more that had to happen. Like, I mean, I had to kind of oversee the growth of the mycelium, I guess you could say, as it went through and found other different places that were stuck inside the body. But it was so much more overreaching and expansive and intricate than anything that I've ever experienced, because I didn't have to put direct attention into where to clean out. It was like I could grow it through and take care of it as one thing. Everything. So
do you think that this has to do with the kind of evolutionary process of the earth? So the earth isn't really, I don't know if the earth is so much evolving, or are we even evolving? It's just basically we're remembering our multidimensionality, right? Maybe the earth is going, do you think that, what I'm trying to say is, do you think that that's always been there and accessible, or is this maybe like a new thing as the earth evolves?
So I feel like this might have been very, very old, but there were very distinctive pieces of it that were missing, and it couldn't feel itself. It was like split into 3 different parts, and each of these 3 parts was trying to reach back to the other one, and yet they couldn't feel each other. It was like a shadow's perspective of light. Like, it can't see light, it just dissolves, you know, and it's like it recognizes there's a reason that the rest of the shadow around it isn't there anymore, but it can't figure out why. And it's the same way, like a light, it'll never ever see a shadow. It's always got to shine at something, and the shadow's behind it. You know, it's like it was very separated. And so this might have been together. Actually, no, like I'm actually getting a, hold on. It's talking to me, hold on.
Download.
So it actually was a planet to begin with. Very interesting. So I'm actually seeing a mycelium ball forming inside of a nebula, and it was like a very specific chemical cocktail of electricity, carbon, hydrogen, and argon got together and created a very special cosmic dance. Argon? What? Okay.
Argon's in everything. You breathe it in, right? It's been around since the beginning of the...
Well, it sparked a very liquid mycelium consciousness inside of a nebula that started to grow, and it gained mass to the point to where it created its own planetary pole. And then it started to gain consciousness on that level. And then it was the original panspermia. It started to move itself throughout the entire universe. And then it was, since it was not conscious in a physical body, when it did have something that came into contact with it with a physical body, it was, it was helpless. It's a plant. And what ended up happening was multiple aspects of the genome were targeted because it goes directly in with the DNA and it can start shifting on those levels. And so they started using it for medicines, they used it for advancement, and then eventually once the crazy stuff started happening, it got weaponized. And the actual weaponization of it, they released spores that had a specific example or specific job of deconstructing and rotting the etheric nature of reality. And they released these on multiple planets, and then they started to create mycelium from a very unconnected perspective. And that was the first growth of the mycelium that was not connected to the oversoul, and then it exploded out into existence. And so the oversoul has been trying to reconnect with its body ever since it was only this big, and now it's almost infinite. That was a crazy download.
So are you saying, so let me see if I'm following you right. Are you saying that basically this oversoul is the, responsible for primordial ooze, so to speak? Is primordial ooze, like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So it's almost like I'm seeing that this is the building blocks behind mitochondrial DNA, which is almost like a little alien inside of us that it's not us, and it powers our cells. And it's almost like I'm seeing the RNA and the mitochondrial DNA and everything, the way that it's supposed to go together. There's a 4-strand DNA helix that I'm seeing here. This might actually be that bridge into physically evolving the DNA. Huh. Okay, so it's almost like it's two sides to the same coin. It's almost like there is a brain without a body, and we are a body without a brain.
Brain, that makes sense.
And brain, like the oversoul, like the big understanding. And it's like it is the big understanding, and then its tiny little mushroom fruit is like it's like a person. It's disconnected from understanding the fullness of it until it grows back into it and it makes the full cycle. Okay. Huh. And so it's almost like and this is very similar to why mushrooms are almost like meat when it comes down to the consistency, the nutrition, the minerals inside of it. They're two sides of the same coin. One is it's like it tried to create a body from the top side, and one is like it tried to create God from the bottom side.
All connected. I mean, all the mushrooms are connected, right? Yeah. There's a network.
Yeah, so it's a whole quantum entanglement, and it's like they're all synapses of one brain.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, that's why I was excited to talk about it. I had no idea about like mycelium being one planet though. Yeah. That was and it's crazy because it's like I see it once it hit the level of density. It's like once there was enough that grew, once it got big enough, it created its own atmosphere, and inside of that atmosphere, it needed something to put there, and so it naturally started to create fruit that made spores. So it's like and then it exploded. It was like it blew out into the cosmos, and it grew through nebulas, and it found star nurseries, and it hung out inside of solar systems until the planets were cool enough. Wow. I really think that I'm actually talking to a very tangible form of God. If we want to call God omnipotent, like it knows everything, like it's every place, everywhere, every when, it's very similar to what I'm tuning into right now.
Cool. So like, when we talk about, I think this is related. Matthew and I talk about this all the time, and I think the three of us have the unclearable people, and this connection of how similar they all are. I'm not quite piecing it all together, but this has something to do with it. It's not about, it's like the false system. There's a false system based on this organic system that you're talking about right now, because you're talking about an organic system, right? But there's a whole false system that's based on this organic system. And like, I'm not really seeing the pattern yet, but I have a feeling that all of these people who are kind of unclearable are kind of not tapped in, or they're on a reversal from this organic system that you're talking about in a way that I haven't really looked at yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think you're actually talking about that false system as that disconnect between like the spore, the mycelium, and the fruit. levels of consciousness.
Right. There's an actual system, interference system there.
Yeah, because it looked like it was taken out. It was like I was seeing what was supposed to be a whole body, and it was like there were pieces gouged out of it, but it felt like whole chunks of the DNA, and it was like receivers, like broadcasters and receivers were taken out, and so it had no knowledge of anything other than itself, and itself was designed to grow, to get bigger.
That makes sense.
Yeah, this is
like all of a sudden what's coming into my practice space is for a long time, for the last few months, it's been all very much other healers that are coming in that are logging in. Your plug and plays, Eric, that you talk about, I'm now got a ton of plug and plays. I mean,
aren't they fun?
That's like all I've been doing the last few months. But then all of a sudden in the last 2 weeks, all of a sudden I'm having the people with the, unclearable who see multiple healers. I'm possessed by a demon or Lord Shiva or whoever else, whatever day of the week it is. Everybody's got a story around it, but it's the identical same interference.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that's coming back in the last 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, I don't want this timeline. I don't want to be on this timeline because they're so difficult for me. They're very challenging. So it's kind of interesting that we're talking about this now because I kind of, I'm trying to integrate it with my own knowledge right now. And I think I need to sit with it for a while and just kind of get the download or whatever, because you're talking about it, but I'm not dialing into it as much as I want to be dialed into it yet. Does that make sense?
Just go eat some mushrooms.
I'm not. Matthew, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it feels like you had an experience with that organic system that is, still present here. To me, it's both ancient and it's also new in the sense that even these organic, like, consciousness grid systems are also ascending. So even though it's existed for, however long, even though it was once a planet, it's also ascending. So it's like we are now able to interact with whatever that consciousness is in a new way. To me, that also describes the method by which, parasitic frequencies such as AI or what people call like the reversal grids. It also reminds me of those false constructs in that, I had an experience that I think I talked to both of you guys about a couple of years ago where I had actually come in contact with a person that I believe was very, very closely associated with some sort of Tothian grid, some sort of Tothian energy. And this person actually gave me the idea and they asked me to go through this meditative process with them of building an etheric web network, just like you're talking about, Eric, around them, around their apartment, around their energy field, for the purpose of drawing in power and abundance, specifically money. And her guides even gave her specific, methods by which to do that, how to create this grid, how to add a tone to it and add a color to it to draw in certain frequencies. So yeah, it feels like something that's been corrupted. It's been something that's been turned into a false light construct that is now used on some level as part of the, technological enslavement of our consciousness. I had never had any idea that it was a planet, but as soon as you talked about that, Eric, I was watching it and I'm like, whoa.
That's what I was downloading right there.
Yeah. No, it was instantaneous. Yep. We're watching you go through this thing and like, I'm seeing it and feeling it like, whoa, this is it. This was the beginning of some sort of primordial network with which we are all now communicating in a different way. Now to kind of jump in on the subject of what Barbara was talking about, the so-called unclearable, quote unquote, clients, or the people that present with an issue that no matter who sees them, never goes away. It always comes back. It's always this very intense, very detailed, very specific story about specific areas of particular parts of the energy body, a very particular type of an entity. It's only this white royal Draco that's constantly attaching to the back of my blank. And it's always there, and it's about, so some people will have these very densely created, very intricate programs that are running. And so from my point of view, and tying together what you're talking about, Barbara and Eric, is that some people are very, very seated, very plugged into whatever that I guess I'll just call it a false light matrix, even though it's a big spiritual buzzword. Who knows what the hell it means? But into whatever that false mycelium network is. And some people have that so deeply ingrained into the energy body at this point that it literally becomes their reality. And so when you're faced with a being or an individual consciousness that's outside of that network, that might be tapped into an organic growing consciousness network like Eric, these things clash. And it's almost as if, in my opinion, our frequency as healers sometimes will clash with a person that is so deeply inundated with that frequency that it's like nothing will get done. And why does that happen? Because I think that there's a personal responsibility that comes for individuals in which they have to own, they have to step into and say, okay, yes, I'm going to go to this person to clear me. Yes, you're going to help me, but no, you're not just going to take away my problem. We're going to start this path of personal responsibility.
Right.
I think those are the missing ingredients, is that people assign everything to the story, and whether the story is real or not, it creates this barrier by which the only person that can move past it is them. So I think that's what you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
No, it is, and that's super important too when you talk about sovereignty and self-responsibility and taking care of your own shit, so to speak. But the issue is with these guys is it's like they can't. How do I explain it? It's like they're totally completely caught in
the story.
Fishing, it's like a fishing web around them. Like that they literally, when you talk about accountability and you talk about sovereignty and you talk about, it's like they literally just veer off and they cannot connect into it. And it's really fascinating to me, and it's part of the disease. It's almost like Alzheimer's, of where when somebody gets Alzheimer's and they start to forget things, they don't get to choose what they forget. They just forget it because the brain starts to atrophy in a specific area. So they start to lose that memory. Now, we know that that can be reversed and things like that on an energetic level. So how do you help reverse somebody? There's a symbiotic relationship between somebody healing and somebody taking accountability. But if there's a virus that's not allowing accountability, then what do you do? Where's the missing link there? Does that make sense? How do you help somebody when they've gotten to that point where they literally cannot access that part of their being anymore? How do we do that?
I think you just gave the answer right there. The virus. We have to find the antidote. And I think this mycelium energy, more than anything, it's given me access to the microbial body more than I've ever experienced before in my life. And the viruses are the mutated mycelium. Like it's almost like it's a spore / mycelium. It's like they took the two properties of the same together and then separated it from the oversoul and gave it a directive. And this is physical as well as etheric, and as well as emotional. There's emotional viruses as well. And this, I think, more than anything, is what we have to start looking for. It's not just understand the symptoms of what's happening, but we have to go into why. Why is that person not able to connect into this? Why is that person, every single time we clear it out and we feel it's clear, they immediately look right back to the story and recreate it? That right there, that's a mind virus. That's the mycelium that is then programming the brain in a virus way to look at a specific thing because that's what it's addicted to. That's the only way that it gets a reaction. That's the only way it gets movement through the nervous system. And we've got to start looking at why that virus is there and then deconstruct it. And that's exactly what I'm starting to figure out how to do. There's been a lot going on. Like we've had some really weird mold issues that were happening, and the whole house was sick for almost a month. And when I started to really figure this out, not only did my allergies and things that were going on from cleaning the mold out disappear, but I've been eating stuff that normally it would wreck me, gluten. And
what?
Yeah, well, because it's a total reaction in the gut biome that blows out the nervous system. And so what I've been doing is I've been reprogramming the gut biome with this mycelium energy to show it what I want it to do. And it's burning all kinds of stuff. And so, I mean, I have a little bit of tension in my shoulders right now, but what I ate would have actively dropped me on the ground. But, I'm the one to always test it, like that's eventually why I'm going to end up putting poison inside of me too. We're going to figure this out the hard way. We're going to get this done. And that's just what I do. It's like, hey, if this is working, then this is going to work. If it's not going to work, then I'm not going to ask anyone else to do this.
I experiment on myself all the time as well. So I think all three of us experiment. Do a lot of experimentation that we probably shouldn't.
Well, how else are we going to figure out? How else are we going to figure this out? There's no other way to get through this except to walk into it and figure out either A, this water is way too hot, or it's an acid and it's eating holes in my skin and I got to get out of here now. Otherwise, like, we're just going to sit there and look at it and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. You want to go in here? Nope.
What's weird is I think you are going to do the snake venom thing too. I can.
Oh, you're going to do the snake venom too?
No, you. I know you're probably. I can literally see that coming for you on a level, and I guess it makes sense. But like we were trying to stop you from like jumping into a fire last year at Contact in the Desert. This guy was jumping into a fire. So.
Hey, but I was so hot that it burnt you, and I wasn't feeling any of it. So you know.
Like, it can be done.
You got to do it. You just got to get it done. And if you think you can do something, just try it. And if you can't, you know, what's the worst that's going to happen? Pain is temporary. You heal eventually. And knowing these techniques, we heal a lot faster. So.
If you lose an arm or something, that's not so easy to.
Well, if the snake,
at some point.
Well,
I'm not going to be the one to try that though.
Well, if the process goes the way that I want it to, eventually I'm going to have to start clipping pieces of myself off to see if I can regrow it, you know? So I'm going to
start with your baby toe.
Very obvious, you know, but I'm thinking more along the lines of maybe like a divot in the flesh, like a scoop or something like that, and try to fill that back up and see how long that takes. Because once you do that, then you can open up the rest of the doorways to start figuring out other things in regrowth. So I know things like that are possible, but you know, it's only when I have to do it on purpose that I've actually been, you know, really investigating it and really trying to figure it out, because I have no choice. You know, it's either that or just sit there in pain and not be able to do anything. And, you know, like it's been about a year ago now, I blew out my SI joint, and it was so bad to the point, like I've you know, broke my ribs, I blew out my other ribs, the spine got broken, and I've experienced a lot of pain in my body. Nothing compared to that. And the surgery, the downtime would have been almost 9 months. And 2 weeks later, I was doing yoga, you know, and I was a little bit stiff, and I had a little kind of a twinge every once in a while. But, you know, it's this stuff right here, like just simply feeling this in my body, experiencing this in my body, it makes me so confident in teaching people this, because I've seen it, I've experienced it. And then I have clients who, they tell me, hey, I had a really bad burn that like 4 days later, it's completely and totally gone. And this went from the mid-arm all the way down to my hand. And I grew a bunch of pink skin underneath it, and then the burn fell off. You know, so it's like we know for a fact that we're heading into these spaces. And in order to really figure out what we can do, we have to test it. We have to figure out what we can do inside of that situation. And if we have to put ourselves inside of life-threatening situations, so be it. Like, the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to die. Like, that's not going to kill me.
I'm just going to die. It's cool.
I'm just going to die. I mean, my soul's eternal, you know, and like the way it's right now, I'll just, you know, I'll come back in. I'll find somebody who's wanting to check out, and I'll trade places with them. Just keep on.
Yeah, and you know, like, with the Graves' disease, I also developed like a chronic pain from it. So it was like the worst that could happen to me, which was my fear of being in like intense pain or suffering, is now it's like already a thing, so it's fine. So like the worst thing that could have happened already happened. So what more could happen?
Right?
You know what I mean? So it's, I'm the same way. You kind of get to a point where it's like you just stop worrying about being safe at that point. And you just
well, you know, and it's very distinctive once you lose your fear of death. There is a space that on the other side of that, there's really nothing else that's scary. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't want to die a painful death. That would be really crappy. Well, until
nobody
it was
wants that.
It didn't matter. You know, but like it's not something that I'm scared of anymore, because not only have I had to face it and make that decision, like, well, I'm dying, let's do this correctly. You know, I'm going to do this with grace and dignity. But I didn't die, you know, and so despite the fact that I didn't die, I still made that decision, and I'm comfortable with it, because on the other side there is exploration. It's a new space. It's not the end, and I'm comfortable with that. And so I don't go look for death, but you better believe if it shows up, I'm meeting it with a smile on my face and the most brilliant light in my heart that could be imagined, and that's how I'm going out. And then I'm coming right back, because I still got work to do.
I'm done. Okay, this is my last rodeo. Done. Okay.
I'm building a little slice of paradise that I'm going to hang out in for a few centuries. It's going to be a magnificent earthy grotto that fills me with life and sustenance, and I can't wait for it.
I'll come and meet you in the etheric.
Oh, yeah. I'll hold space for you. We'll have a little altar for Barbara to come and put her face in the
All right. All right. So it's been an hour.
Oh, wow. Has it already?
Yeah.
How you guys? I love you guys. You're so fun to talk to.
I know. I'm scared to start on another topic or we'll be here all day and I have clients coming up here.
Yeah, and I want to keep these more around the hour anyway. That way it's not too much because, you know, when you get 3 people who are working on these levels and it's not something that it's wishful thinking, but we actually see the results in the real world around us. When we get together, we talk about some really heavy things that bring insight into quite a bit of understanding that it's normal for us, but other people really don't have those connections. And that's why I love these conversations because there's so many epiphanies of aha moment that honestly, we don't ever get a chance to like show everybody or teach anybody. It just kind of randomly pops up. And, you know, I think an hour is more than enough to really fill the plate and get some digestion going. So I think this is actually perfect right now, unless you wanted to add anything, you or Matt.
Oh, actually, no, I just wanted to totally agree with you. I think it is critical for us to continue to speak in an open and uncensored way about the experiences we're not only as healers, but as people that are healing, people that are going through this ascension process. I think the reality is for a lot of us, you guys, that, you know, the physical death in this incarnation is the ascension that we're actually all talking about. And so the reality is that we have this whole bunch of time in the physical realm with which we still have a lot of shit that we have to accomplish and do and experience and feel. And, you know, I would say, to me, I get a lot of benefit about listening to, talking about, and kind of just sharing the energy of other people's experiences. And it kind of helps me understand what we're all doing here, what we're meant to be doing with this time that we have here. And, you know, and sharing those experiences with everybody else out there in the world. It just really makes sense of this stuff for me because I mean, I've only been in this for like a few years now, like versus you guys. And, you know, this to me, this is absolutely the greatest time that we could have chosen to come together, you know, like to do this work. So I just enjoy hanging out and being part of it all, you guys. So thanks.
I think it's adorable, Matt. Like you say, I haven't been in here doing this for years. You literally met me when I started. Like that SSP conference was when everything started.
Yeah.
I guess you were there at the beginning, man. You were literally there.
It's silly. I know. So I think we should, I know we all 3 have stuff going on. You guys are both going to be at the Dimensions of Disclosure in a couple of days, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then do you guys want to just take a second to kind of say what's going on with you, and then I'll say what's going on with me, and then we can close it up?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to be presenting at the Dimensions of Disclosure as well as doing a workshop. We're actually going through our ancestral karmic clearing workshop right there that we did a practice run with about 20 people, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this was hands down one of the most amazing workshops that I've ever led. The amount of energy cleared, not just from the people, but from the entire planet, was absolutely mind blowing. And I can't wait to walk more people through this. It's,
it was cool. I did that workshop with it. I got to be a part of that workshop, and it was really awesome.
It was amazing. I had so much fun. I had no idea it was going to turn out that good, but it totally blew my mind. It really did.
What about you, Matthew?
I love that you did a practice run, Eric, because I actually did a practice run of the thing that I'm going to do. For those of you guys that are attending Dimensions of Disclosure, literally for the first time ever, I'm taking everybody through not only your first multidimensional briefing of what you need to know right now about the state of 3D, 4D, and 5D etheric, energetic anatomy currently operating in your body. This is literally a multi-dimensional briefing, and then we're going through a very specific energy clearing process in which we're going to be bringing awareness and moving energy through those very areas. Not only that, we're giving out crystals to each and every person that's showing up there as literally, it's like an etheric USB drive that we're going to be using to charge, to harmonize, and to unify the timelines of every single person there. It's incredibly bold. It's the most ambitious thing that I've ever done. At this stage of anything that I'm doing, I'm deeply, deeply honored. What's cool about it is it's literally free. All you have to do is be there at the conference and you can come to this thing. This is Saturday, Dimensions of Disclosure at 2 o'clock. And so, yeah, we're literally shifting our timeline, clearing our energy, and getting a briefing on the status of dimensional energy in the body. So I'm deeply, deeply honored to be doing that.
So I might, honestly, I might have to.
I hope so.
I might have to go now.
Yeah, that sounded amazing. I want to be there.
Every time I try to go, and then even our mutual friend Alexis, she was like, "Hey, we're going to be in charge of the outside. Do you want to go be with the do outside stuff?" And at first I was like, "Okay," and then I said, "No." I don't know why, but so what I'm doing right now is what I'm really guided to do is, because the bulk of my clientele are other healers. I started teaching them everything that I know. So I started a mentorship program that you guys can look on my website, barbarabuck.org. And it's primarily, first part of it is about self-mastery, because a lot of healers don't know how to do what we do, so they can't get to where we are. So this is about the basic skills that you need for self-mastery as a healer and as just a human being in general. And then we move into actually becoming a multidimensional healer, where I literally teach you everything I know. So I'm really super excited about that. It's the first time I've done it individually. And I'm really, really, really excited. It's all going to be online, and it's going to be so cool to work with healers one-on-one in that capacity to see how far they can go with what I give them. It's going to be super awesome, and I'm really excited about it.
Can I come too?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Really,
oh, that
right?
sounds amazing. Like, honestly, yeah. I want you guys to start really building up your own workshops where you're teaching people how to do things, and start fleshing out your own modalities, so I can go and take your guys' courses. Like, I get a lot out of it, honestly.
I know. I got to get the time. I got to make time. Make time for that.
We're going to have nothing but time coming up here, so, let's get it done. All right, so Barbara Buck, you can find her at barbarabuck.org, correct?
Yes.
Matthew Mournian, rememberyourmission.com.
You got it.
And I am Eric Rains at unleashingnaturalhumanity.com, and you can find us all on Facebook under our names. And thank you all so much for joining us. This was absolutely a lovely conversation. I can't wait to hear what you guys get from it.
Bye-bye.